Pre-algebra, Mr. Lawrence here with your flipped lesson for January 26th. I think it's a Thursday. I can't keep it all straight. Anyway, today we are going to be doing two things. We're going to classify triangles, and we'll see how it goes. We're probably going to classify quadrilaterals as well, classifying triangles. All right, the first thing we're going to do is there's two ways to classify triangles. First is by the sides, not the number of sides. They all have 3 sides, but we're going to classify by the sides. And then we will classify by their angles. All right. The first one we're going to try is we're going to have, let me see if I can find it. Ooh, a triangle that looks like this. And I'll betcha Tony Brooks can tell you that that triangle there is called an equilateral triangle. And all that means is equal laterally. It means it's equal all the way around. In other words, all sides are congruent. All sides are congruent in an equilateral triangle. All sides congruent. Remember that symbol there? That's not a zodiac symbol. That means all sides congruent. That's an equilateral triangle. All right, let me get another type of triangle in here. And where's my magic drawing? There we go. This triangle has 2 congruent sides. 2 congruent sides. I was wondering if Alexandra Morgan could tell me what it is. 2 congruent sides. I'll bet she can. I'll bet she's already shouted out. And if you're watching with Alexandra, you probably know she said it. This is called an isosceles triangle. And I had a math teacher one time talk about a good way to remember this. See SOS. Do you know what SOS stands for? SOS stands for Save Our Ship. And if you look at this equilateral triangle, it kind of looks like a sail to a boat, especially for a wonderful math teacher, a wonderful artist like your math teacher, Mr. Lawrence. All right, so that's one good way to remember. Isosceles, SOS in the middle of it. Oh, the 2 sides of the sail are the same. So there's an isosceles triangle. All right, now after the isosceles triangle, there's one more type, and let me see if I can get one. Yeah, I like the way that one looks. Yeah. This one has no congruent sides. This one has no congruent sides. No sides congruent. Which means this is one measure, this is another one, and this is a different one. Notice they have different marks on them. This, I know Kareem knows, I've heard him use the word before, is called a scalene triangle. Any triangle with no congruent sides is classified as scalene. All right, so let me see here. I need to scroll back up and get to my angles. We can also classify triangles by angles. We might have a triangle that looks like this, in which all the angles are congruent. This angle measures the same as that one, which measures the same as that one. Okay, so that one has all angles congruent. And we call that an equiangular. Equiangular, which means all angles equal. That's all it means. The other one was equilateral, because laterally is to move around the outside. Equiangular. All right. Now, we might have a triangle that is acute. Acute. And let me see if I have an acute triangle up here. Well, I do. I have the equiangular one. Well, let's see if I can draw one using some line segments. Okay, this triangle here, notice all 3 angles are less than 90 degrees. All angles are less than 90 degrees. The measure of all 3 angles is less than 90 degrees. We call this an acute triangle. No, an acute triangle is not one that gets a lot of dates on Friday night. It's a triangle that has three angles that each measures less than 90 degrees. Okay, notice that this equiangular triangle, if you figured all these out, these would all be 60. Okay, this would be an acute triangle. Okay, by the way, it would also be an equilateral triangle. It's actually a regular triangle. This one has lots of different names. So an acute triangle is a triangle that not one that gets all the dates, but it's one that has all three angles less than 90 degrees. Now we might have a triangle where one angle is 90 degrees. By the way, it's impossible, Omar, to have a triangle with more than 90 degrees. Two angles more than 90 degrees. Excuse me, two angles equal to 90 degrees. I'm not saying that very well. Think about that, Omar, and see if you can tell me on Friday why that is. Why you cannot have a triangle that has two 90-degree angles or two angles more than 90, either way. Okay, this is an easy one. Most kids know this one really well. This is called a right triangle, and it has one 90-degree angle. Okay, and then finally, there's one more type of triangle, and it looks kind of like the scalene one I draw. And you understand there's different types of scalene triangles. But this one here, if you look at these angles, maybe this one looks like a 30-degree angle. Maybe this one looks like a 40-degree angle. Well, that means that this one is 110 degrees, right? This is called an obtuse triangle. And the obtuse triangle has one angle greater than 90 degrees. Its measure is greater than 90 degrees. So we had the classifications, acute, obtuse, and right. Those all refer to the angles of the triangle. And then scalene, isosceles, and equilateral, which refer to the sides of the triangle. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can label some triangles. I'll draw a triangle. You see if you can tell me what classification falls into. Now, by the way, they will have two classifications in almost every case. So let me get a triangle up here. Okay, take a look at this triangle over here to the right, and I'll classify by angle first. The first thing I notice is that there is this little box thingy here, and that is a right angle mark. If ever I see that on a shape, that means there's a right angle. So I know that this is a right triangle. Now, it's not just a right triangle, because I also notice that there are these marks here, which tell me that those two sides are congruent. A triangle with two congruent sides, that's my sailboat one, is isosceles. So this is a right isosceles triangle. See how that works? Okay, I'll do another one for you and then give you a chance to practice a few on your own. Okay, take a look at this triangle. I'll do my angles first. I notice that it has one angle that is 120 degrees. That's more than 90. That makes this an obtuse triangle. Okay. Now I look at the sides and I notice that each side is marked different. This side is 1, this side has 2 marks, this side has 3 marks. None of those sides are congruent. That means that this is a scalene triangle. So this is an obtuse scalene triangle. Again, it has two classifications. All right, let's give you some practice here. Okay, so there's 3 examples there for you. See if you can name them on your own. Go ahead and pause the video, copy them down, and see if you can do it. If you're still watching at this point, I'm assuming that you're ready to see the answers. So on number 1, I notice I have 2 congruent angles. The third angle is not marked congruent, so that makes this isosceles. I can't assume that the third angle is the same as the other 2 unless it's marked or unless I'm given a measurement. Had they written a 60 in there for the unmarked angle, then I would know that all 3 are 60. Okay, now I also look at the sides. 2 sides, oh, I said that backwards, didn't I? It's isosceles because the 2 sides are congruent. Excuse me. All right, right now I can't tell you anything about the angles because I don't really know. I don't have that third angle, excuse me. So let me fill it in and let me say that it's 80 degrees. If that's the case, all 3 angles are less than 80. Why? Because there's 180 degrees in a triangle minus 80. The angle I know leaves 100. There's 2 that are the same. If I divide that by 2, they both must be 50 degrees. That's 50, and so is the other one. So this becomes an acute triangle. It's an acute isosceles triangle. Okay, so two sides the same makes it isosceles. All three angles less than 90, that makes it acute. All right, where are we at here? Problem number 2. Looks like all three angles are less than 90 degrees. Again, this is an acute triangle. You can't go by what it looks like. You have to go by the information they gave you. All right, looks like all three sides are different lengths because they're all marked differently. That makes it scalene. So this is an acute scalene triangle. All right, the one up at the top, the red one, number 3 there, looks like I have an angle bigger than 90 degrees. That makes it obtuse. All right, it looks like two of the sides are the same. That makes it isosceles. All right. Okay, I think that just about does it for today's lesson. Tomorrow, Friday in class, we'll be spending time on classifying triangles and trying to figure some things out about them. All right, Mr. Lawrence signing out. Good night, everybody.